All right, we are live. Hi, everyone. I am Violette Ayala. I'm the founder of FemCity, and you're joining us today for a FemCity conversation. We are still talking about self-worth. That is our theme for the month of August, and I am so excited to have with us today. Actually, we just have our next guest coming through as well. Let's add her in here, and let's change the format a little bit. So we are discussing today self-worth. I have with us today Patrice Freeland. Patrice, I know it's our first time in this format together, but I have heard so many amazing things about you. I just want to say that you are so loved in our community. So I wanted to let you know that. And we also have Dr. Serena who's joining us. She has been a part of our panels before, so you probably recognize her. She's also amazing. So we're going to talk about self-worth. I'm going to ask our experts today for their advice, but if you are joining us live, feel free to ask questions. You can always put it in the chat and I'll ask on your behalf. If you're watching the replay, because I know so many of you watch the replays on the weekend, you can always reach out to any of our experts, and you can also add questions here. Just tag us so we can see them, but ask questions. We want you to thrive and flourish and succeed in all ways. So anything that we can do for you, please let us know. But let's go ahead and dive in. Patrice Freeland, share a couple of sentences about who you are, what you do.
Yes, absolutely. So I actually have been in the corporate leadership space for almost 20 years. I have a strong background in process, in project, in corporate strategy. And then over the past 8 years, I have transitioned and brought that skill set with me to then focus on more of the individual process and well-being and focusing on my wellness business, Wonderful Land of Oils, wellness and coaching. And now I look at the individual and help you make those improvements. And then you can take that into your corporate and other aspects of your life.
Awesome. Wonderful. We have some love that came through. So Lynn is watching. Hey, Lynn. So great that you're watching. I do see some other femmes hopping on as well to watch. So we're so happy that you're here. Dr. Serena, share a little bit about yourself as well, please.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Serena, and I work significantly with weight, hormones, gut, thyroid, mood, that whole picture. First, taking the approach of natural medicine. I work a lot with mindset, and then how can we really come up with that plan over the long term so you really get to know your body and trust what's going on the inside as well.
Awesome. All right. So let's dive in. Okay. So why are we talking about self-worth? What's the big deal? So here's the thing. Sometimes we know our worth. We talked about that last week. We know how to define our worth. We know how to find it, connect to it. But then now what? How do we convey it to others? So now that we know our worth, we know what our value is. So what do we do next? What's the next step? So that's the conversation for today. Patrice, what is your advice and how do you convey your worth in your world for those that are looking to see maybe examples of what we can do so that we show up, not only we know who we are, but others know who we are too?
Yep, absolutely. So I find that this comes up in usually like two buckets. One, we have that professional definition of what is my worth, particularly to helping you solve the problem that you want to solve. And that usually has a dollar amount that is attributed to that. But then the second place where this comes up is what I'll just generically refer to as boundaries. Is when someone needs something of us, and that can be our family, our friends, our clients, you name it, is how do I give them value but still respect myself and my value in a way that is going to be mutually acceptable to everyone. So in that more like corporate setting of I'm helping you solve a problem, the first thing that is so important, and I know this was covered in that previous session, but I really want to drive it home again, is you have to believe it. And you have to have a very articulated story for yourself with exactly what that means. And yes, we are all very individual people that are bringing our authentic selves and the whole package of who we are to a situation. But what exactly does that mean? And how does that help other people? So when we have that blueprint in that story of what are my technical skills that I'm bringing, and technical doesn't mean technology, it's, just that administrative skill set. How do I combine that with my method How do I relate to other people? How do I get things done? How do I influence? How do I process and relay information? And then what are those things that just make me my authentic me? What's my sense of humor? What's my energy that I'm bringing? And when I have that clarity, then I very clearly then can say to a potential employer, to a potential client, this is what I'm hearing that your problem is. And here is my skill set, here is my method, and here is the love that you get from me to help you solve that. And then they clearly know what they're getting from us. And then we talk about that monetary value. And if you're not sure what that is, then there are lots of ways to determine that. There's benchmarking, there's websites, there's groups like this to determine that. And I also really, really want to encourage you to make sure that that dollar amount is fair to you. As women, we tend to undervalue ourselves monetarily, and make sure you're not doing that. Your expertise, your time, your passion is worth a lot of money. And your assurance of that and being confident and like, this is what I know that I'm worth from a financial perspective. The more sure you are in that, and you've given them the details of what exactly that means to them, then they're going to be very confident in making that purchase or having a conversation about it. And they're going to know exactly what they get.
And
in that second piece, I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. No, I was going to love on that, but go ahead, finish up. Sorry.
Yeah. And then in regards to boundaries, it's a very similar situation. People, and this sometimes happens with our friends and family that want to take advantage of our expertise that we offer professionally, is that when someone comes to us in that more personal perspective and needing assistance, or just needing time, wanting to have dinner, needing a shoulder to cry on, then again, when we have that, particularly around the how, of how we need to do things. Like for me specifically, I am a heavy thinker. And while there's things that I can give you on the fly really quickly, for me to give you an individual response, I need a minute. So I know for me, when someone comes to me, that I'll tell them, give me this certain amount of time, and I want to write this up in process to give you something thorough that's individualized to you. And then we can do that. And then again, when you have that, your blueprint of how you best work, then you can provide that value of, here's how much I can give. This is what I give. This is the timing that I can give. This is how I communicate. And then everybody wins.
I love that. So I was going to pull out some golden nuggets that you shared. First of all, the the first step that you mentioned is having confidence that you have to believe it. Because one thing is, for instance, if you say, well, how much is your hourly rate, as an example? And you're like, well, it's like $3.75 an hour. It's kind of like, that's what it's, that's, your confidence is not there, versus like, how much is your rate? My rate's $375. So the confidence and believing in your worth really shows through in the way that you present yourself. So I love that you shared that. You have to believe it. And you can look at all the tools that you just mentioned to verify and confirm that that's your worth, monetarily speaking. And I love that you mentioned, in essence, counting your receipts. So when you are sharing and you're trying to convey your worth, not only to demonstrate it with confidence and total belief within yourself, but also to back it up with your receipts. So here's my certifications. Here's how many hours, here's how many years I've spent. Like years experience getting my degree, or my classes, or the mentors that I had, or whatever it is. When you back it up with that, it really does support your worth, and it helps you to convey it to others so they can see, oh my gosh, wow, okay, $375, but you have this. Oh, that makes total sense. Versus like, not stepping into that with strength and kind of spending time in that. And people are like, well, why didn't they hire me? Well, if you come across and you don't back it up with your receipts, and you're not showing up confidently, people want to hire someone that really believes that they're worth it. So it's a great investment. She sounds like a real pro. So I love that you shared those tips. Let's go to Dr. Serena. Dr. Serena, what are your tips for those that are really struggling to convey their self-worth, either in the corporate environment or in their small business?
Yeah. Well, on that note, one thought that always kind of popped into my mind was, we don't need to convince anyone of our self-worth. By just being here, we are worthy. In the very big ethereal, we could say, oh, well, there's thousands of souls that have always wanted to come through, and yet we were chosen. From the physiology side, how many millions of sperm come along, and yet we were the right combination. However, sometimes it is a little more difficult to believe that, especially if we are going through more tumultuous times, if we're having moments in our life that seem to be challenging that a little bit, if we start comparing ourselves to others, which I will say in practice, I do see significantly, especially if, others are, let's say, losing weight faster than someone else, or gaining more health benefits, or supplements work for one person but not necessarily the other. It's usually like, oh wait, what's wrong with me? But it's taken in such a way of like, oh, there must be something inherently wrong. Well, maybe there's other explanations as well. And one of the instances that I thought about for my own life was back in college, because chances are too, even in all of this, and even just by sitting here and watching this, you're advocating for yourself, even somehow indirectly. You are realizing that there are ways to overcome this. And so when I was in college, I had just gone through something, had a really tough realization. And over time, I started to notice I was taking it out on eating. Like, I would try to stuff down my feelings, I would try to distract myself, use all those excuses. Until one day I, was talking to someone and I was like, I think I have an eating disorder. And the common words are, oh, well, we know you're not skinny, but are you purging? I don't fit those diagnoses, but inherently, like that belief, that gut instinct, something was wrong. So then I went to the campus nutritionist who I worked with for a little bit, and she's like, you're you're not eating the wrong foods. Like, again, I wasn't fitting a paradigm, but even she sensed that something was still off and was like, all right, even though my original journey began in psychology, now she's like, all right, well, you definitely need a therapist, but someone in the more eating disorder specialized realm. So I went to see her, and one of the first things that came out was I had this memory of when I was in second grade. I forgot my homework. I'm 7 years old, so still pretty impressionable, but still that pure young kid. And she's like, what's some of your earliest memories of just not feeling good? And I immediately thought of that time in second grade. I forgot my homework. My teacher looked at me with just bug eyes, like, how could you do this? And the way I internalized it, I wanted to go 6 feet under. Like, I didn't want to show my face the rest of the day, the rest of the year. The shame was just overwhelming. And in that moment, I realized it was more than just the eating. It was more than just the diagnoses, but clearly there are other reasons that could have been contributing factors that also need to be addressed. So in that indirect kind of self-advocacy, it's what are ways that you've been showing up for yourself, whether it's through journaling, through visualization. Maybe it has just been a mindful meal of eating something you really enjoy, and that's what it was in that moment. So it's like, to me, the self-worth piece can really take on so many different types of forms, but it's also so important to know that, again, even just by being here, by showing up, by waking up in the morning, you are also doing that self-advocacy.
So just to reiterate what you're saying, so you're saying the connection between self-worth. So we're talking today about how to convey it, how to share it with others so that others see your worth. You're saying before you can even do that, you need to step back and understand your own self-worth. Going back to also what Patrice mentioned about the confidence, going back and diving in a little bit so that you can get more comfortable in your self-worth, so that you shine in that light so that your confidence level can grow as well.
Exactly, because it's from there. So really coming from the inside, where it was great, where I heard with Patrice a lot of the outside, the boundaries, but again, then we had that reflection inside, and that was one of the main things I thought of. Like, all right, because it does have to come from us, recognizing we are unique beings.
And I love also, and Patrice, I'd love to know your final advice as well as we wrap up. But I love also, Patrice, that you mentioned the boundaries, because I think that's a huge thing as well. Is that your self-worth. You are good at conveying your self-worth, but then people are asking. So I love that you mentioned that, even because we get all that from people like, oh, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? I love that you took a step back and you're like, I will help you, but these are my boundaries. These are my parameters. I need time to think about it. I need to go ahead and create a plan, a strategy, advice to give you. I will work on it. So people realize that when they come to you for advice and they're questioning your self-worth, because I think that people question when they're asking you to, oh, let me pick your brain for 2 minutes. There's definitely like a devaluation of your self-worth, right? Like they think it's just like, oh yeah, I have time. I just pop it out right over my head in 2 seconds. But understanding that my self-worth dictates that I'm going to process this. I'm going to spend time on this, creating those boundaries and see if it fits. So I love that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of women are in that space too. Like, I know my worth, but then people keep asking me for free stuff, right? Like, like doing this free and doing that free. So I love that you mentioned that. What is your final advice, Patrice, for those that are struggling to convey their worth to others?
One, I would do just a little exercise of just sit down and make those notes so you have your blueprint of what you're sharing. And then to build that belief, something that I do, particularly on days where I'm very tired, I'm feeling a little less than, imposter syndrome is kicking in. And this doesn't even need to be professional. This is all the roles that we play: motherhood, sisterhood, friend, you name it. It applies to everything. Is I'll put one hand like over my heart, one hand at the bottom of my rib cage, and that is at your heart and your solar plexus chakras. Your solar plexus is where your confidence center is. And then I'll just make those declarative statements of worth of, I am valuable. I am an amazing problem solver. I am caring. I get the value that I deserve from other people, and just kind of go through some of those things that, as you're writing down the things that you're good at and the things that you bring to the table that you question just a little bit, and you need to really, really, bring that into your soul's confidence, and start that day with those affirmations. And then that is setting you up for a day of confidence. And then whenever you need to have those conversations with people, whether it is a boundary conversation or a more formal conversation about professional worth, then one, you're going to embody it better, but then you also have those details to share to tell that story that we talked about before.
I love it. And, I wrote down imposter syndrome because it's a whole other conversation. And I know sometimes our members, when we give them advice of, doing those mantras, stepping into that place and repeating those positive affirmations, I know sometimes members will say, yeah, but it's not real. It's fake. Like, I'm just sitting there and it's not, I just don't believe it. Like, I'm not someone who's this. And I always find that you may feel like it's fake at first, but sitting in that space and reminding yourself and saying the affirmations, the mantras over and over again, eventually the energy does change and you start feeling more light and you start feeling like that is who you are, and it starts becoming who you are because you're focusing on that. So I know it does take time. I recognize that sometimes we do feel like frauds when we're like repeating mantras that we're not really sure we're there yet, but eventually you do get there. So hang in there, keep on doing with the mantras and positive affirmations, because eventually you will start to really become that and resonate that. So I just want to mention that because I know we're going to get that. I know we're going to get some comments like, I love all that stuff, but every time I do it, I feel like a fake or a phony, but that's part of the journey, is to shed off all of those titles and to elevate ourselves into higher spaces. And that comes from believing in ourselves and repeating those affirmations. So I love that. Dr. Serena, we're wrapping up, but I know you probably have great final advice. What's your final advice?
Oh my God, I just had a first, oh yes. Be around others who can validate how you want to feel. That's huge. Because again, even in that story, even though I didn't fit a diagnosis, I was still able to find people who would help me along and see what would my next step of confidence and, just healthy habits overall be in that journey. So wherever you are in your business and in life, to be around people who could even see your potential, because then as you start to get that reflected back in, it's wait, eventually it's, oh, they're seeing something. And then also then your next boundaries and those words are going to come from a place that's aligned from the heart. You may start to notice a dichotomy with people too as you begin to grow. So just know there could be a little bit of a grieving period there as well. But as long as you stay true to, as you continue to develop to who you are, that's your self-worth. That's your innate being.
Yeah, I love that. And it goes back, oh, I hate this layout. This way is better. I love that because you are the people that you hang around with. And if you're hanging out with people that will elevate you, support you, and affirm and confirm what you are, that's just a beautiful place to be. I know that one of the most challenging things for women is to find a support circle, of people that are going to validate. So I absolutely love that tip. So thank you so much for joining me today on this conversation. I love this conversation. I could talk about it all day. Patrice, how can femmes find you to learn more about the work you're doing in this world?
Yes, I would love to talk to you and get to know you better and talk about this and anything else on your mind. Best place to find me is at my website, and it is wonderfullandofoils.com with 2 L's. And all my contact information is there. You can schedule a free consultation and virtual coffee. I would love to talk to you more.
Awesome. The virtual coffee. So coffee chats are really big at FemCity. If you're not familiar with that, coffee chats are huge at FemCity, where we do coffee chats with amongst members. And it's one of our most raved about activities. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. Dr. Serena, how can femmes find you to learn more about the work you're doing in this world?
Yes, so likewise, my website is a fantastic place. So it's drserenagoldstein.com, where I also offer complimentary 20-minute phone calls. So that way we can even dive in and go a little deeper too on, how can we even bring some order to what's going on?
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for everyone that joined us. We will be back next week with another conversation about self-worth, and let us know how these tips helped you. We'd love to stay in touch. And for those that have never tried out FemCity, head over to FemCity.com. We've got a great 30-day free trial membership, and it includes an extra gift just for you. Mwah! See you next week. Bye.